Mafia, the City of Lost Heaven. The year was 2002, and this game changed everything. You played as Tommy Angelo, a taxi driver in the fictional city of Lost Heaven during the 1930s. One day, he picks up the wrong passengers, two mobsters running from a rival gang. Instead of getting killed, Tommy gets recruited. What starts as a favor turns into a life of crime. Tommy joins the Salieri family and slowly climbs the ranks. Bank robberies, turf wars, hits on rivals, it was all there. The story was cinematic, the cars were authentic 1930s models, and the city felt alive. Prohibition era. America had never looked so good or so dangerous. The missions were linear, but they told a story like no other game at the time. You weren't just a criminal, you were living through the rise and fall of a mobster. The shootouts were brutal, the driving was realistic, maybe too realistic, and the ending hit hard. Tommy's story was a tragedy, and you felt every moment of it. Mafia set the standard for narrative driven crime games. Mafia II. This one came out in 2010 and it took everything to the next level. You played as Vito Scaletta, a war veteran returning to Empire Bay in the 1940s and 50s. He came back broke, his family was in debt, and the only way out was crime. Vito reconnects with his childhood friend Joe Barbaro, and together they dive into the underworld. At first, it's small jobs, stealing cars, selling cigarettes, but things escalate fast. They work for different families, double cross rivals, and get caught in the middle of mob wars. The story spanned decades, showing the golden age of the mafia and its slow decline. Empire Bay was a living, breathing city. Snow fell in winter, leaves turned in autumn, and the fashion changed with the times. The cars, the music, the atmosphere, it was all perfect. You could drive around listening to 50s rock and roll or just soak in the post war American aesthetic. The gameplay was grounded, no over the top action, just shootouts, cover mechanics, and driving that felt weighty. But the story was the real star. Vito's loyalty was constantly tested. Friends betrayed him, families turned on each other, and survival meant making impossible choices. The ending was brutal and ambiguous. Joe's fate was left unclear, and Vito was left alone, trapped in the life he thought would save him. Mafia 2 wasn't about power or glory, it was about the cost of the life. Mafia 2, Joe's Adventures. This was DLC for Mafia 2 and it filled in the gaps. While Vito was locked up, Joe was still out on the streets doing what he does best, causing trouble. You played through a series of missions that showed Joe's side of the story: assassinations, car thefts, shootouts, all the usual mob work. It didn't add much to the main story, but it gave more time with Joe, one of the best characters in the series. The missions were arcade style, scored based on your performance. It was a fun addition, but nothing game changing. Still, if you loved Joe, this was your chance to spend more time with him before everything went sideways. Mafia 2, Jimmy's Vendetta, another DLC, but this time with a new character. You played as Jimmy, a hitman betrayed by his own crew and left for dead. He survives and comes back for revenge. The DLC was mission based, each one a hit, a heist, or a score to settle. The tone was darker, more violent, and less story focused than the main game. Jimmy didn't talk much, he just killed. The missions were brutal and to the point. No long cutscenes, no moral dilemmas, just revenge. It was a different flavor of Mafia 2, leaner and meaner, but it didn't have the emotional weight of the main story. Mafia 3. This one was different. It came out in 2016 and it took the series to the 1960s. You played as Lincoln Clay, a black Vietnam veteran returning to New Bordeaux, a fictional version of New Orleans. He came back looking for peace, but instead, he found his surrogate family, the Black Mob, slaughtered by the Italian mafia. Lincoln survived the massacre, barely, and decided to burn it all down. This wasn't about joining the mafia, it was about destroying it. Lincoln recruited three underbosses: Cassandra, a Haitian gang leader; Vito Scaletta, yes, the same Vito from Mafia 2, now older and exiled; and Burke, an Irish mob boss with a drinking problem. Together, they tore through the city, taking over rackets, killing enforcers, and dismantling the Italian mob piece by piece. The gameplay was different from the previous games. It was more open world, more action heavy. You take over districts, assign them to your underbosses, and manage your criminal empire. But the formula got repetitive: interrogate, kill, take over, repeat. The shooting was solid, the stealth was decent, but the mission structure wore thin. What carried Mafia 3 was the story and the setting. New Bordeaux was dripping with atmosphere: jazz clubs, bayous, segregated neighborhoods. The racism of the era wasn't just background noise, it was front and center. Lincoln faced it everywhere, from cops, from shop owners, from the world itself. The soundtrack was legendary: 60s rock, soul, and blues set every mission. The story was raw and personal. Lincoln wasn't romanticizing the mob life, he was using it as a weapon. Revenge drove him, but it hollowed him out. The ending forced you to make a choice, and none of them felt like a win. Mafia 3 was flawed, but it was bold, and it told a story games rarely touch. Mafia 3. Faster Baby. This DLC introduced Roxy Laveau, a civil rights activist and stunt woman. She teams up with Lincoln to take down a corrupt southern sheriff running a speed trap and exploiting black communities. The DLC added new cars, new missions, and a lot of high speed chases. Roxy was a great character: tough, smart, and didn't take anyone's nonsense. The story was short but impactful, dealing with systemic racism and abuse of power. It also added a new area to explore, which was a nice change of pace from the main map. Mafia 3. Stones Unturned. This DLC brought back Donovan, Lincoln's CIA handler, and revealed more of his past. Together, they hunted down a rogue CIA agent selling military weapons to criminals. It was more action heavy than the main game, with bigger explosions, more gunfights, and military grade firepower. The story added depth to Donovan's character and explored the shady side of government operations. It wasn't as personal as the main story, but it was a solid, explosive side adventure. Mafia 3: Sign of the Times. The Darkest DLC. A cult called the Ensanglante was terrorizing New Bordeaux, performing rituals and leaving symbols around the city. Father James, a character from the main story, asked Lincoln to stop them. The tone was eerie, almost horror like: abandoned buildings, cryptic messages, and disturbing imagery. Lincoln hunted down cult leaders, uncovered their twisted beliefs, and put an end to their reign of terror. It was a strange departure from the usual mob violence, but it worked. It showed that even in a city consumed by crime, there were darker things lurking beneath. Mafia Definitive Edition. In 2020, the original Mafia got completely remade. Not a remaster, a full remake from the ground up. The story stayed the same: Tommy Angelo, the taxi driver turned mobster, but everything else was rebuilt. The graphics were stunning, the city was more detailed, and the gameplay was modernized. The driving was less punishing, the shooting felt better, and the pacing was tighter. Lost Heaven was reimagined beautifully: every street corner, every building, every vintage car. The voice acting was redone, the soundtrack was remastered, and the cutscenes were cinematic masterpieces. For newcomers, it was the best way to experience the original story. For longtime fans, it was a love letter to a classic. The remake proved that the story of Tommy Angelo was timeless: a man who wanted out, but the life wouldn't let him go. Mafia Trilogy. In 2020, all three games were bundled together: Mafia Definitive Edition, the full remake; Mafia II Definitive Edition, a remaster with updated visuals; and Mafia 3 Definitive Edition with all the DLC included. It was the complete saga: three different eras, three different cities, three different stories about the mafia. Each game showed a different side of organized crime: the rise, the golden age, and the fall. Together, they told the story of the American mafia from the 1930s to the 1960s: the good, the bad, and the bloody. The Mafia series wasn't about glorifying crime, it was about showing the cost. Every game ended with loss. Tommy lost his freedom and his life. Vito lost his friends and his soul. Lincoln lost his humanity. These weren't power fantasies, they were tragedies. The series respected the weight of violence, the consequences of choices, and the inevitability of a downfall. The cities were characters themselves: Lost Heaven, Empire Bay, New Bordeaux. Each one was crafted with love and detail. The music, the cars, the fashion, the language, everything was authentic. The gameplay evolved over time, but the focus on story never wavered. Mafia proved that video games could tell stories as powerful as movies. It wasn't just about shooting and driving, it was about character, atmosphere, and consequence. The series didn't just entertain, it made you feel. And in the end, isn't that what great storytelling is supposed to do?